Welcome to the debate. Today, we're examining the valuation and the long-term sustainability of Chainlink, or Link. It's arguably the most critical piece of infrastructure in the entire decentralized finance ecosystem.
It really is. And our discussion today is framed by some recent analysis, specifically some thoughtful projections put forth by Anton Sasterpin on buywork.com. He lays out these various price scenarios for Link all the way through 2030. And, they range from pretty cautious to some truly astronomical triple-digit targets.
Right, which brings us to our central question. Given Chainlink's foundational, almost monopolistic role, it secures the vast majority of all decentralized applications. Are these incredibly bullish price forecasts fundamentally justified? Are they backed up by its utility, its security, and its ongoing push into the institutional market?
And this is where I'll be coming from, do we have to conclude that these aggressive targets are, structurally undermined? I'm going to argue that market fragility, the persistent dynamics of token inflation, and frankly mounting specialized competition, they create some serious headwinds that make those hyper-optimistic scenarios just unrealistic.
I'll be arguing the opposite, that Chainlink's indispensable infrastructure, its proven resilience in market crises, and its unique position to enable the tokenization of real-world assets provides such a secure foundation that reaching that $100 to $150 range isn't just a possibility, it's a high probability, driven by fundamental real-world adoption. So let's start with just the sheer scale of its necessity. Chainlink's position is, for lack of a better word, indispensable. Sources consistently state that something like 90% of all DeFi applications currently rely on Chainlink for their data. We're talking about securing over $50 billion in total value. This is not some fleeting competitive advantage. It's a structural requirement. Chainlink is essentially the single trust layer connecting blockchains to real-world information. And without it, complex smart contracts just fail.
Okay, I absolutely acknowledge the dominance. But the terminology you used, monopolistic, that should raise some alarm bells. When we're talking about a project holding between, 62 and 70% of its market, experts call that a monopoly. And while that speaks to its success, sure, that kind of hyper-concentration creates a massive systemic risk. Think about it. If this one protocol were somehow compromised, 90% of the entire DeFi landscape could just halt. That single point of failure, even if it's technologically robust today, is not sustainable in the long run.
But that assessment of risk completely ignores the massive institutional tsunami that's coming, the tokenization of real-world assets, or RWA. This RWA industry is projected to balloon to $16 trillion by 2030. Chainlink is the only provider building the kind of compliance-ready infrastructure that can handle that influx. Its cross-chain interoperability protocol, CCIP, and the collaborations with giants like JP Morgan, Swift, MasterCard, it all confirms its role as a connective tissue between TradFi and the blockchain. That institutional integration is the core thesis behind those highest price targets. The hyper-optimistic projection suggesting $200 and $300 per token, that requires a market cap over $127 billion. A huge climb, yes, but achievable if RWA captures even a tiny fraction of that $16 trillion.
See, we absolutely have to scrutinize those price targets against the cold reality of the token supply. All the optimism about institutional adoption is great, but the economics have changed completely since the last cycle. The circulating supply has expanded. It's jumped to roughly 700 million Link tokens. You compare that to the 420 million or so that were circulating during the last market peak, that isn't a minor increase. To even get back to the previous all-time high of around $52, you need to inject about 66% more capital just to overcome that supply dilution.
That's a powerful point about the supply.
Exactly. So that base scenario, predicting $60 to $82, that requires a $40 to $60 billion market cap. And the bullish scenario of $100 to $150, that needs $65 to $99 billion. These numbers rely on growth rates that, frankly, newer and more specialized competitors are actively challenging. I mean, you look at oracles like Pyth Network. They're tailored for high-frequency data for chains like Solana and Sui. They offer faster updates, which directly competes with Chainlink in the critical derivative space, and that fractures the very market that Chainlink once completely owned.
That supply and competition are necessary considerations. But Chainlink's market share isn't rooted in just being first. It's rooted in battle-tested reliability. That 60 to 70% dominance is the direct result of it staying accurate and online during every single major crisis event. The FTX collapse, flash crashes, even AWS outages. Competitors failed during those shocks. This resilience, that's its moat. And multi-billion-dollar institutions, they prioritize security above all else. This track record, for me, means that the conservative scenario, the $40 to $44 price floor based on a $30 billion market cap, that should be seen as the absolute minimum valuation for infrastructure this critical.
That historical resilience argument is compelling, I'll give you that. But it only really speaks to the tech. It doesn't address the economic friction or the regulatory risk. I mean, we have to anticipate that institutions and regulators will eventually want to diversify away from a single provider simply to mitigate that exact systemic risk I mentioned earlier. And more immediately, there's the cost. Chainlink's fees are known to be expensive for smaller projects. This high cost is a direct economic incentive for alternatives like Pyth, who offer cheaper, faster solutions to just constantly chip away at that market share from the margins.
But its ability to command that premium is directly tied to the value it secures.
I just have to challenge the feasibility of those hyper-optimistic targets then. To get to that $100 to $150 tier, as the analysis notes, Link needs a market cap similar to the previous all-time high of BNB. We're talking around $99 billion. That's a monumental climb, especially with the inflated supply. But more critically, the core token utility, paying the node operators, creates this perpetual structural selling pressure. The nodes get paid in Link, but they have to convert that Link to fiat to cover their real-world operational costs. This constant conversion just neutralizes network growth into selling pressure, limiting price appreciation.
I see the mechanical drag you're talking about, but that view overlooks the deliberate changes that have been implemented, what they call Economics 2.0. Chainlink is actively engineering scarcity. They introduced the Chainlink Reserve, which is a mechanism that converts protocol revenue, fiat, other tokens, whatever, into Link and then locks that supply out of circulation. On top of that, the enhanced staking has already locked up over 45 million Link tokens.
45 million is a start, I suppose, but it's still a drop in the bucket compared to a 700 million token circulating supply.
But it fundamentally changes the dynamic. It's about creating a large pool of secured tokens that reduce the effective circulating supply. As more and more value flows through CCIP and RWA, more Link gets absorbed into that reserve and locked in staking. These are the very mechanisms that those bullish projection models rely on to drive the price higher. It's a long-term strategy to create scarcity that's directly proportional to network growth. And the ultimate driver, the thing that I think overcomes all of this, remains the RWA narrative. Chainlink isn't just offering generic data, it's providing sophisticated compliance-ready tools. I'm talking about ACE, the automated compliance engine, and confidential compute. These solve the final critical hurdles for institutional capital. They ensure only authorized entities can interact with tokenized assets, all while protecting proprietary data. I mean, Sergey Nazarov himself called this the final building block.
Okay, but the need for compliance also dictates the need for control.
Exactly. And when we're talking about a $16 trillion market, the partnerships with DTCC and JP Morgan, who are actively testing this stuff using Chainlink, it proves they trust this shared standard. Building a private solution with the same level of decentralized trust is prohibitively difficult for any single bank. This guarantee of a shared, audited infrastructure is what justifies that base case scenario of $60 to $82 and pushes it well into the bullish range.
I have to challenge that premise that institutions must rely on a decentralized middleman. The critical need for compliance and control actually invites powerful incumbents, big tech, the big banks, who will always prioritize their own proprietary control. What's to stop a major banking consortium from building its own internal permissioned connectivity solution? A private CCIP, if you will. They value controlling the data pipeline and mitigating third-party risk far more than they value open decentralization.
Because the core value of an oracle is verifying data through multiple, competing, decentralized sources. A private internal system, by definition, can't offer that.
That's true for public DeFi, yes. But for permissioned, B2B capital markets, control often trumps transparency. And beyond that, the market is undeniably segmenting. While Chainlink excels at high-security RWA integration, the competition is optimizing for speed. Pyth network is tailored for that sub-second latency you need in derivatives. So if Chainlink's monopoly inevitably shrinks as the Web3 economy diversifies, well, then the underlying volume needed to support a $200+ valuation just isn't going to materialize. And while Chainlink is the established leader, reaching the upper end of those forecasts, especially that $200 to $300 hyper-optimistic tier, requires a level of market cap growth that I think overlooks the structural drag of its own token inflation and the inevitable competitive pressure that will continue to chip away at its market share.
Well, the material certainly shows the duality of Chainlink's position. It's a dominant force, essential to DeFi survival, but it's also facing these inherent scaling and competitive pressures. The path forward will really be dictated by whether its technological moat can outrun the economic realities of its tokenomics.
And we'll leave it to you to weigh that structural dominance against the economic and competitive pressures. We encourage you to analyze the evidence we've presented today and form your own conclusions on just how feasible these projections are.
If you found this discussion insightful, be sure to subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and please let us know in the comments what you think. Can the link climb the walls of its own tokenomics to hit those triple-digit targets? Thank you for joining the debate.